Hi, I'm Rainer and welcome to my train room. Today I'm going to be working on this corner of the layout to try to get some of the scenery base finished. Similar thing to what I did a few weeks ago in that corner. I know you can't see it on the camera, but if you look back, I'll put the link up here. I put a little bit of a scenery base there, some trees, a building, things like that. And then right here, just off camera, is my lumber mill that I just built recently. Again, another build, put the link up in the corner. But anyway, for today, I want to work on this corner. I've got the GoPro set up here to capture the video of me building it. And it's nothing too complicated. What there is I've got this curve of track on the back on the plywood road bed, and I've got this styrofoam here. But in the corner, in the back, it's just a hole that goes down to the bottom deck. So I need to build a base back there. I'm probably not going to put trees on it today. I just want to get the styrofoam base on it, and then I'll put some plaster cloth, paint it brown like I've done on the rest of it, and just to get a base for it so I have a starting point. The reason I want to get that done is because there's a couple of reasons. I can't do anything down here too much until I get all of the top enclosed, because otherwise, whenever I'm working on this upper deck, stuff falls through, whether it's paint, plaster cloth, ground foam, dust, things like that. So anything I build down here would be getting stuff falling on it. So I need to get this kind of sealed up, as it were. So what I want to do is that back corner to begin with, get that kind of finished. And that way also when I start building buildings, because this is my idea of building a little small northern town or village kind of here, I want to be able to have the base so I can set the buildings in place and see how everything ends up starting to fit into place. So that's the plan today. Nothing complicated. Just going to build up, cut the styrofoam to fit in the back corner, build some supports underneath it, cover that with plaster cloth. With that, I'm going to get on with doing it, and I will capture whatever I do with the GoPro. So the first step in the procedure is to get a piece of styrofoam, and I just set that up on top in the corner and cut along the one wall, cut a little sliver off of it to make it fit into the corner tightly, because the walls aren't exactly at 90 degrees. It's an old house and not much in this house is actually square. So I cut the styrofoam to fit into the corner tightly, and then I tape it down just lightly so that it doesn't slide around too much. And then I get underneath and mark the outside of the road bed, the plywood road bed, a curve into the bottom of the styrofoam with a Sharpie. Take that out and then cut it out with a knife, and now I have the base for the corner. The next step is to create some supports for it. So I just got some more of the styrofoam and cut some strips, figured out what width I wanted them to be, and in this case it was 1 3/4 inches. Cut those strips and test fit it all. Then I put a bevel on the edge of the styrofoam so it slopes down toward the track. Again, the same thing as I did in the opposite corner at this end of the room. And then I used the glue gun to glue all of that in place. Once that corner was done, I then started cutting some strips to fit the edge of the road bed to close the gap between the road bed that's elevated and the styrofoam that I already had down. So I cut some strips for that, put a bevel on them so I have less chance of having 90-degree corners. So the corners, the slope down wouldn't be too sharp. I used the glue gun to glue all of those in place, and then I used more pieces of styrofoam to create a little bit of slope in places where I thought I needed it. Including a little bit of a hill that I created between the pond that I'm creating up here and where the lower track comes out of the duck under. Once all of that was all glued in place, I then covered all the tracks with some green masking tape. That's just so that I don't have to clean the rails too much later, because I'm going to be using some plaster cloth, some drywall compound, paint, things like that. So I just covered them all in green tape and then started laying down the plaster cloth. And This is just a matter of cutting them and putting them in place and layering it just so it overlaps a little bit. It's just to create a base for the scenery, and doesn't have to be too pretty, but it does allow me to even out the slopes and not have to do it all with the styrofoam. So it's nice and easy to create kind of curving slopes and little random lumps and things like that by using the plaster cloth. So I put all of that in place and let that harden for a while. It starts to harden pretty fast, actually. The next thing I did was I still had some holes in the walls from this room. Originally was my daughter's bedroom, and so there had been some closet shelving in this corner, and the room was painted before we took the shelving out, so that there was still holes in the wall. So I kind of cleaned up the holes a little bit and patched them with some Sheetrock 20, and I also put in a patch, because when I cut the hole through for the duck under, I made it taller than I needed to because my upper staging is up there, but it ends at that wall. So I cut a patch out of drywall and put that into place and mudded that in with the Sheetrock 20. And then I got some more Sheetrock 20 and watered it down quite a bit to make kind of a soupy mix. And as you can see here, I just brushed it on all over the whole layer. Don't worry about getting it nice and smooth. In fact, having some roughness to it is good, because that just adds to the random texture of the ground. The idea with this is to give it a little bit more of a harder shell and to cover up all the holes from the plaster cloth and hide the overlap seams of the plaster cloth and hide any of that kind of sharp edge that you might get from using styrofoam underneath there. So this just makes it look a lot more flowing and kind of rounded edges and everything else. Once that was all covered, I just let it dry and harden overnight. The Sheetrock 20 actually hardens up pretty fast, but I wanted it to be nice and dry and all the moisture to be gone out of it. So I left it to dry overnight, and then next morning, the first thing I did was sand the patches in the drywall and the walls and give those a coat of blue paint and let the blue paint dry for a couple hours so that it was kind of workable. I should have probably let it dry a little longer, but it worked out okay. The next step in the process was to get my warm spice brown paint that I use for dirt on this layout, and just started brushing it on to the plaster ground cover, and I just brush it on heavily, and I did it in 3 sections: the far corner, the part in between the tracks, and then the part closest to the benchwork. Just brush the paint on, and while it's still wet, just sprinkled on some different shades of brownish, greenish ground foam onto it just to give it a little bit of texture. And when you do it this way, you don't actually need to use any glue because the paint is still wet, so the foam just sticks right to the paint. It kind of absorbs a little bit of the paint, and it doesn't need any glue to hold it in place. So I like doing it this way. I've done this on all of the hills and areas in here just to get a bit of a basic ground cover, so it doesn't just look like paint, and it means I also don't have to be spraying glue and things yet at this stage. So it just gives a basic ground cover and adds a little bit of texture to it, so it doesn't just look like painted plaster. So this is the stage I'm at right now. I have the ground cover here. It looks brown, green, kind of looks like, I don't know, some kind of desert or something. Certainly not the Northern Ontario look I'm looking for, but at least it's not pink styrofoam anymore. So now I can start working on where I want to put buildings, and it's easy. I can just paint over this stuff. If you paint over the ground foam with a different color, it just ends up looking like a little bit of grit and texture in there. So it's not really a big deal, but this gives me something for ground cover, so it's not completely empty. And you can probably see in this other camera view, I put a couple of trees in here just to test what I wanted it to look like, because my idea is when the trains come in from the duck under over there, or if they're leaving this area, I don't want to put a tunnel opening over there. It doesn't really fit. But what I do want them to do is just kind of disappear behind the trees, because those things are just, the top of the trees are basically at my eye level here. So the idea is that the train just kind of disappears around the corner and behind the trees, and that's all you see of it. So I'm still going to need to figure out what I'm doing along this wall between that opening and this corner of the wall. But so far I'm happy with it. I've got, at least it's not pink styrofoam, and now anything else I do up here is not going to cause other junk to fall down on my layout down here. So anything I build down here is also going to be safe because I've sealed it all up. So now I think in the next video, I'm going to start building some structures, some houses and smaller things like that, because I've been picking up a lot of buildings and stuff like that at train shows over the last year. So I think I'm going to start putting together one of the smaller houses, and I will have a video for that as well. This corner right in here, it's a bit of a depression. It's painted brown right now, but I'm going to be painting a different color in there, probably a variation, and then I'm going to be pouring some clear or somewhat colored epoxy in there, like a resin mix, for making that into a little pond or a lake. So the idea is that eventually in this corner, what there's going to be is a little bit of a small northern town village scene with a small lake at one side. So that's the idea anyway. So now at least I have a base and I can build some houses, place them up here, and then from there figure out where I want to put roads and trees and anything else I might want to do up here. So before this, it was kind of, well, in the corner. If I put anything in the corner, it would have fallen right through. So right now, at least I've got a base for doing all of that, and I can start placing the buildings and figuring out what fits where. So it's good to get this done. Got to start building some houses for that. And then this corner, I have my lumber mill, and it's still pink styrofoam, but that will be the next bit of scenery that I do in here as well. So anyway, hopefully you guys learned something from this. Not a very complex video, just another bit of me doing some basic scenery, getting a basic scenery shell down here. And like I said, hopefully you learned something from it. If you liked what you saw, or even if you're slightly entertained by it, click the like button. And if you want to see more of what I'm doing here, please subscribe if you haven't subscribed already. Anyway, and thank you for watching, and see you next time.